I bullied my stepsister for accepting golden child treatment from her mother, then refused to go on the family vacation if my stepsister was treated like a princess, and my entitled dad called grandma to babysit me and went on their vacation without me. My dad never loved me. I'm the third daughter in my family, and before I explain what happened with the vacation thing, I should probably say up front that I haven't always been nice about my younger stepsister. I know that. I've definitely teased her before. I wouldn't call it full-on bullying, but yeah, sometimes it's been the kind of teasing that gets under someone's skin. I'm not pretending I've been perfect. My name's Kara, I'm 15, and I live with my dad, my stepmom Dana, and my 3 sisters. My older sisters are Bree, she's 18, and Tessa, 17. Then there's my stepsister Leela, who's 13. Technically, she's Dana's daughter from before she married my dad, but she's been living with us for years now, so it's not like she's some new person in the house. Still, things have always felt a little uneven. It's not like anyone says it out loud, but Lila kinda gets treated differently. Or maybe betters is the word. And the rest of us notice it even if the adults pretend it's not happening. One example that comes up every few months is this cabin trip. Dana has this friend who owns a cabin in the mountains, and every couple months we all go there for a week. It's supposed to be a fun family thing, like bonding time or whatever. But honestly, the trip itself kinda shows exactly how things work in our house. We always take 2 cars. The official reason is luggage. We fold down the third row in both cars so there's room for bags, which means there technically aren't enough seats for all 6 of us. But the way it always ends up working is exactly the same every time. Dad drives one car with me, Bree, and Tessa. Dana drives the other car with Lila. It's been like that for years, and driving with my dad is not great. He hates stopping. Like, genuinely hates it. Bathroom breaks are rushed, food stops are quick, and he gets annoyed if anyone suggests pulling over again. And the music situation is even worse. He listens to these old rock playlists that he refuses to change. I swear some of the songs are older than he is. Meanwhile, we know exactly what's happening in the other car. Dana and Lila stop at Starbucks, sometimes twice. They get drinks and snacks and take pictures of them. Once they even stopped at a little outlet mall on the way and bought sweatshirts. We know this because Lila posts about it or texts us pictures. At first we thought it was funny, like, okay, whatever, they're having their little road trip. But after a while it started to feel kind of annoying. One time, Tessa asked if we could ride in their car instead. Dana laughed like it was a joke and said something like, "Nope, this is our car." And that was that. Even my dad didn't say anything, he just kept driving. The other thing that always happens is the room situation at the cabin. There are 3 bedrooms. One is the master bedroom where Dad and Dana sleep. Then there's another room with a queen bed. And the last room has 2 bunk beds. Every single trip, Lila gets the queen room by herself, and I, Bree, and Tessa all stay in the bunk room together. 3 of us, 2 bunk beds. Technically there's space, but it's cramped and messy, and we're always stepping on each other's stuff. Meanwhile, Lila has a whole room to herself with a big bed and a dresser and everything. At first we didn't really question it, she's the youngest, so maybe that's why, but she's 13 now. It's not like she's a little kid, so this time Bree finally said something about it. She brought it up at dinner a couple weeks ago. She wasn't even rude about it. She just asked if maybe we could rotate rooms on the next trip. Like maybe one of us gets the queen room this time, and then next trip someone else does. It seemed reasonable to me. Dana immediately said no. She just said something about how Lila is used to that room, and it would be unfair to change it now. Which didn't make a lot of sense because the rest of us have literally never gotten into that room. Tessa tried to point that out, and Dana kind of brushed it off. My dad just sat there quiet. That's sort of his thing. If Dana says something, he usually just goes along with it. After dinner, the 3 of us were in our room talking about it, and we were all pretty annoyed. And yeah, I'll admit I made a comment about Lila, something sarcastic like, "Princess Lila needs her own throne room," stuff like that. The kind of teasing that probably sounds meaner when you say it out loud. Bree told me to chill, but she was laughing too. Anyway, the next day we tried talking to Dad directly. Bree basically said that the trip didn't feel fair and asked if we could at least switch cars or rotate rooms or something. Dad got really defensive immediately. He said we were making a big deal out of nothing and that we should just be grateful we even get to go. Then he said something that kind of surprised us. He said if we were going to complain the whole time, maybe we shouldn't go at all. We thought he was bluffing, but he wasn't. Later that evening, he told us he had called our grandma and asked if she could watch us that week instead, like babysit us, which felt weird because Bree is literally 18. When we heard that, everything kinda got quiet. None of us expected it to go that far. Now, the situation is awkward. The trip is coming up soon, and technically we're not going anymore unless we change our minds. My dad keeps saying we're being brats. Dana hasn't really talked to us about it at all. And Lila is acting kind of smug about the whole thing, which probably isn't helping. Part of me wonders if we should just give in and go anyway. The cabin itself is nice, and it would still be fun being there. But another part of me feels like if we go without saying anything, then nothing will ever change. And yeah, I know I haven't always helped the situation. I've definitely teased Lila before when I was annoyed about the favoritism. I can admit that. But even with that, the way things are set up still feels really unfair. So now we're stuck deciding whether to just go along with it like always, or stay home and lose the vacation entirely. Opinions. One person's opinion. I don't buy your framing at all, not because I think you're lying about everything, but because the emotional math here is off. You're talking like the entire issue is logistics, cars, coffee, shopping, bedroom rotation. But the adult's response sounds like this is about behavior. Your dad didn't negotiate because he probably already knows what happens when all of you are together and annoyed. He didn't say, let's make a chart or we'll rotate next time. He went straight to, fine, don't come. That's not good parenting, but it is revealing. And let's talk about Lucy for a second. She's 13, you're 15, with two older sisters at 17 and 18. That's a rough power imbalance even before the stepfamily stuff. 3 bio sisters versus 1 younger stepsister. That can get cruel fast, even when the older girls swear they were just joking. Group teasing is not small when you're the one trapped in it. People act like bullying only counts if someone is shoved into a locker or called slurs 24/7. No. Constant little comments, eye-rolling, nicknames, excluding her, making her feel like the outsider in the family. That sheet absolutely counts. Honestly, I think your dad and stepmom may have built a whole system around minimizing contact because none of them trust you three to stop. Separate car, separate room, immediate grandma call. That pattern is screaming at me. It sounds less like random favoritism and more like adults who found the easiest band-aid instead of actually parenting the conflict. That said, the adults still suck too. Dana sounds like she's doing protection through preference, which just makes resentment worse. Your dad sounds spineless as hell and would rather outsource the problem than address it. But you don't get to stand on principle about fairness while downplaying your own role. If Lucy gets special treatment because the alternative is being stuck for hours in a car or a room with sisters who needle her, then yeah, I get why they do it. So my vote. You are the bad guy, your sisters probably are too, and the adults are just handling it in the laziest possible way. Another opinion. I'm going to be harsher than some people here. I think you buried the actual story. Because the real story is not, my stepsister gets Starbucks. The real story is that you, your sisters, your dad, and your stepmom have settled into this screwed up family structure where nobody says the obvious thing out loud. You want strangers to debate bedroom fairness because that sounds clean. What's actually underneath it is probably years of resentment, stepfamily tribalism, and you older girls making Lucy pay for it. The phrase little teasing is bullshit, sorry. That's how people describe behavior when they want credit for admitting something without admitting anything useful. What did that teasing look like? Was it comments about her being spoiled? About being the favorite? About not being a real sister? Did the three of you do the thing where one person says it and the others snicker? Because those are the kinds of things that wreck a kid, and then the aggressors act confused when the parents separate them. And honestly, your post accidentally gives away more than you meant to. You say Lucy is acting smug. That tells me you already see her through a hostile lens. You interpret everything she does as annoying because you resent what she represents. Maybe she is smug. Or maybe she's relieved for once that the trip won't involve being stuck in a pressure cooker with 3 girls who dislike her. Those are not the same thing. Your dad sucks, by the way. Big time. He sounds like a man who has decided peace means backing whichever woman is loudest or whichever arrangement causes him the least inconvenience. He doesn't solve shat, he just routes around it. And your stepmom may very well be unfair, but if she thinks Lucy needs shielding, I can see how she got there. So yeah, you and your sisters deserve the punishment. Not because wanting fairness is inherently wrong, but because this post feels manipulative as hell. You wanted validation for standing up for yourselves, while carefully sanding down the part where you and your sisters may be the reason Lucy is singled out for protection in the first place. That's why the grandma call happens so fast. Everyone in that house already knows the real issue. You're the one pretending it's just about a cabin. Continuation. I posted here a couple weeks ago about the cabin trip situation with my family. I didn't expect the response I got. Honestly, I thought people would at least see where we were coming from. But instead, a lot of you decided I'm basically some bully who spends her free time tormenting my stepsister. So I guess I'm updating because things have gotten even messier since then, and also because a lot of people made assumptions that really don't match what's actually happening in my house. First off, I'm not pretending I've been a saint. I already said that in my original post. Yeah, I've teased Lila before. My sisters have too. But people acting like we've been running some kind of coordinated bullying campaign against a 13-year-old is honestly ridiculous. There's a big difference between sisters giving each other crap and what people online are describing. If that counts as bullying now, then I guess every sibling group on the planet is abusive. And also, nobody seems to understand what it's actually like when someone just gets dropped into your life and suddenly they're your sister, whether you wanted that or not. Because that's the part nobody here wanted to talk about. When my dad married Dana, none of us asked for that situation. I'm not saying Dana's a terrible person or anything, but the truth is, we didn't grow up with Lila. She wasn't someone we chose to have in our lives. One day, our dad just got married, and suddenly she lived in our house, and we were all supposed to act like this perfect blended family. People keep saying, she's been your stepsister for years. Yeah, that doesn't magically make you close to someone. Sometimes it just means you've been stuck with them for years. Anyway, after I made the post, the cabin trip still hadn't happened yet. My dad had already told us if we were going to complain, then we could stay with our grandma instead. At the time, my sisters and I thought he was bluffing. He wasn't. A few days later, he told us our grandma said we could stay with her for the week if we didn't want to go. He literally had already arranged it. That kind of pissed me off, not going to lie, because it showed he never had any intention of actually listening to us about the fairness thing. It was basically like, if you don't like it, remove yourselves. So we ended up at my grandma's house. Before we left, though, there was a whole thing with Lila that people here probably would have loved to see because it fits your narrative. The night before the trip was when everything actually blew up. Up until then, it had mostly just been this weird tension around the house. My sisters and I had already told Dad we weren't going if nothing about the situation changed, and Dana had been acting like we were already ruining the trip before it even started. Bree and Tessa were in our room, half packing and half complaining about the whole thing. I was mostly on my phone scrolling through the comments on my post, which honestly just made me more irritated because everyone kept acting like we're some evil trio who spends our free time tormenting Lila. At some point, Bree sent a message in our sister's group chat, the one with just the three of us. She said something like, "Can't wait for the princess to get her private bedroom again while we sleep like camp counselors." I replied, "Yeah, well, if you cry enough and run to mommy every time someone says something mean, apparently you get rewarded for it." Tessa sent a couple laughing emojis and then wrote, "Seriously? The victim act works wonders." Bree added something like, "Maybe we should try it. Start fake crying and see if Dana gives us Starbucks and a queen bed too." None of us were even yelling or anything. It was just messages, stuff you say when you're annoyed. Apparently that didn't matter. A few minutes later, the bedroom door opened and Lila walked in holding Bree's phone. She must have grabbed it from the kitchen counter because Bree left it downstairs earlier. She didn't even say anything at first. She just held the screen up so we could see the messages. Then she asked if we thought it was funny. Bree grabbed the phone back and asked why the hell she was reading it. Lila said it popped up, and she saw it, which honestly sounded like bullshit. Then she started going off about how this is exactly what we do all the time, talking about her behind her back and acting like she's some kind of problem in the house. Bree said it was a joke. Tessa told her if she wasn't snooping through people's phones, she wouldn't even know about it. But Lila kept going. She started bringing up random stuff from months ago, things she said we'd said to her during arguments, like she'd been keeping track. She said I once told her she wasn't even a real sister. She said Tessa called her spoiled. She said Bree laughed when she cried during a fight last year. Honestly, it was weird how detailed it was. Dana came upstairs when she heard the arguing, and Lila immediately showed her the messages. Dana barely even looked at them before she started saying, "This is exactly what she's been talking about, that the three of us constantly target Lila." My dad came upstairs too and tried to tell everyone to calm down, but Dana kept saying the same thing about how we always gang up on her. That phrase comes up a lot now. My dad told us to drop it, but Dana kept going and saying we never make Lila feel welcome and that she's tired of it. At that point, Lila suddenly started listing off things we supposedly said months ago, like really specific stuff. She said I once told her she wasn't a real sister. I honestly don't even remember saying that. Maybe I did at some point when we were arguing, I don't know, but she said it like it was some huge defining moment. She also said Tessa called her spoiled once, and that Bree laughed when Lila cried about something last year. She was acting like she had a whole file on us. I remember thinking it was kind of weird how detailed it all was, like she had been storing these things up waiting for a moment to unload them. Dana obviously took her side immediately and started talking about how Lila has felt isolated for years, which, again, is not how it actually works in our house. We all eat dinner together, we go on trips together, we literally live in the same house. It's not like we lock her out of rooms or something, but somehow everything turned into this huge conversation about how we've been mistreating her. My dad didn't even try to balance it out. He just said if we couldn't be respectful, then maybe staying with grandma was the best option. So that's what happened. The week at my grandma's house was honestly kind of weird. At first we were joking about it like we were on our own vacation. Grandma lives in a smaller town, and she lets us watch whatever we want, and she actually stops for food when people are hungry, which already made it feel different than road trips with my dad. But then at one point I was talking to her about the cabin thing. I was explaining how Lila always gets the queen bedroom and we're stuck in the bunk room and how Dana refuses to rotate it. Grandma listened for a while, and then she said something I didn't expect. She said she's heard some things about the teasing before. Apparently Lila cried during a visit to her house last year and told her we make her feel like she doesn't belong. I told her straight up that siblings tease each other and that it's not like we sit around plotting how to ruin Lila's life. Grandma said something like, sometimes 3 against 1 can feel overwhelming. Which again is people acting like we're some organized attack group instead of just sisters who argue. Later that evening, she told my dad on the phone that maybe the family needs counseling. So now that's apparently happening too. When my dad and Dana got back from the cabin, things were really awkward in the house. No one was yelling or anything, but you could tell the adults had been talking about us. Then my dad announced that we're going to try family therapy. He said it's not punishment, it's just to improve communication. But it definitely feels like punishment when the entire reason for it is that Lila says we make her uncomfortable. We had the first session last week. I already knew how it was going to go before we even walked in. The therapist started by asking each person to describe a moment that stood out to them about the family dynamic. Dana talked about wanting the house to feel welcoming. My dad talked about stress and conflict. Then it got to Lila. And of course she told a story about something I supposedly said to her a long time ago. Again with the not a real sister comment. She described it like this super emotional moment where she went to her room and cried and felt like she didn't belong in the family. The therapist nodded a lot and asked how that made her feel. Then they looked at me, and I said honestly that I don't even remember that conversation the way she does, which is true. I'm not saying it never happened, but the way she describes it sounds like this dramatic event that shaped her whole view of the family. From my side, it was probably just an argument between 2 kids. I also said something that people here probably won't like, but I think is true. I said it's hard to instantly accept someone as your sister when they're basically forced into your life. That doesn't mean you hate them, it just means it takes time. And honestly, sometimes that closeness never really happens. The therapist asked if I think Lila receives different treatment. I said yes, because she does. Separate car rides, separate bedroom, different rules when arguments happen. Dana jumped in immediately, saying those things happen because Lila needs space, which kinda proves the point. If she always gets protected from the rest of us, of course she's going to look like the favorite. The session ended pretty awkwardly after that. My dad told us we have to keep going for a few more weeks, so that's where things are now. Everyone online told me I should reflect on my behavior and realize I'm bullying my stepsister. But honestly, from where I'm standing, it still feels like the adults decided a long time ago that Lila needs special treatment, and now every conflict just gets interpreted through that lens. If she's upset, it's because we're mean. If we're upset, it's because we're jealous. There's never a version where maybe the situation itself is just unfair, and I still think it is. You can call me an arsehole if you want, but I don't think it's crazy to say that living with someone you didn't choose, who always ends up getting the better side of every arrangement, eventually makes you resent the situation. Apparently now we're supposed to fix that in therapy. So I guess we'll see how that goes. Opinions on the narrator, one said, still an arsehole. And the group chat is what makes this so much worse for me. You didn't just say something shitty in the heat of the moment. You and your sisters literally have a private space where you sit around mocking your younger stepsister and then act confused when people call it bullying. That is, harassment. Full stop. You can dress it up as venting or joking, but when the whole joke is one person and all 3 of you are in on it, that's not normal sibling stuff anymore. That's a pack mentality. And the fact your grandma clocked it too says a lot. Grandparents usually bend over backwards to soften things, especially when it's their son's kids involved. For her to hear your version and still basically go, yeah, no, this sounds bad, tells me the problem is way more visible than you think it is. Same with your dad immediately arranging for you to stay with her. Parents do not jump to backup housing because of one complaint about a bedroom. He already knew exactly where that fight was going because he's seen this pattern before. I also think your stepmom is overcorrecting, but not for no reason. She probably sees a younger kid getting frozen out by three older girls and responds by carving out protected space for her, a separate car, a separate room, and separate treatment. Is that fair? Maybe not. Is it understandable? Absolutely. Your dad sounds weak as hell, by the way. He is doing the classic coward parent thing where he avoids the hard conversation and just manages logistics instead of behavior. So yes, Dana might be making the favoritism worse, but you're acting like it appeared out of nowhere. It didn't. It looks like a reaction to you and your sisters being nasty. The darkest part is that you still think the real scandal here is that she saw the group chat, not what was in it. That says everything. Another said, I'm less interested in the "are we bullying her" debate because at this point that part is obvious. I'm more interested in how messed up the whole family structure is. You, Bree, and Tessa have basically formed a block. Whether you realize it or not, you operate like a unit. Shared room, shared resentment, shared jokes, shared group chat, and a shared story about how Dana and your stepsister are the problem. That bond probably feels righteous and even comforting to you because it makes you feel like the original family is still intact somehow. I think that's why you defend each other so hard. If one of you admits the behavior is ugly, then the whole sister alliance cracks a little. Then on the other side, you've got Dana and your stepsister acting like their own two-person island, and your dad. He just bounces towards whichever side is less exhausting in the moment. That man is not parenting, he is crowd control in khakis. He'd rather ship you to grandma's than sit there and say, my daughters are being cruel, my wife is playing favorites, and this house is splitting into camps. Your grandma is actually the most interesting person in this update to me. Because she didn't just babysit, she listened, connected this to prior incidents, and seems to have realized there's a long-standing pattern, which means the damage is old enough that Lucy told her about it before. Old enough that Grandma heard your version and still didn't buy your self-justification. That should scare the hell out of you more than the Reddit comments, honestly. And your stepsister. I think people are too quick to either make her an angel or call her manipulative. She sounds like a kid who has been collecting receipts because nobody believes her unless she can recite dates, phrases, and exact moments. Kids do that when they're living in environments where they're constantly told they're too sensitive or it was just a joke. They start memorizing. Not because they're evil masterminds, but because it's the only way to prove they're not crazy. So when you say she had a whole list ready, yeah, no sheet, she probably needed one. Your family has built an entire routine around containing the fallout of your and your sister's behavior instead of actually fixing it. Separate car, separate room, grandma backup, therapy, none of that happened in a vacuum. It happened because the adults know the house is toxic, and the easiest short-term solution was to protect the younger kid from the older coalition. That doesn't make Dana perfect. It doesn't make your dad less spineless. But it does make you very obviously the arsehole. Response from stepsister. I didn't expect to ever write something like this. A friend from school sent me a link a few days ago and asked if the story sounded familiar. At first, I didn't think it would be about me. Lots of families have step-siblings and cabin trips and arguments. But when I opened it and started reading, I knew almost immediately. The ages were right. The cabin, the cars, the bunk room, the Starbucks stops, even the group chat thing. And the way the narrator talked about me, like I was this annoying obstacle in the house that everyone had to work around. So yeah, I'm the stepsister from that post. My name's Leela. I'm not going to pretend reading it didn't mess with my head a little. Seeing someone describe years of your life like it was just sarcastic jokes and people being oversensitive is a weird feeling. But what really got me was the part where she said she didn't even remember some of the things I brought up. I believe her. That's kind of the point. When you're the person saying the cruel thing, it's just another random comment you forget 5 minutes later. When you're the one hearing it, sometimes it sticks around a lot longer. I'm not writing this because I want strangers to attack my stepsisters. Honestly, that's not the goal. Things have already changed a lot in our house since the original post anyway. But I do want people to understand what it actually felt like on my side of things. Because a lot of what Kara wrote left out the parts that made the situation what it was. The short version is that the cabin stuff wasn't the real problem. It was just one of the more visible symptoms. The real problem started years before that. When my mom married their dad, I was 9. They were already a group before I ever showed up. 3 sisters who had grown up together their whole lives. Walking into that house felt like stepping into a place where everyone already knew the rules except me. At first, I tried really hard to fit in. I remember asking if I could watch movies with them in their room. Sometimes they'd say yes, but I could tell they didn't really want me there. They'd pause the movie and whisper to each other, or switch to something they knew I didn't like. Little things like that, nothing dramatic, just small reminders that I wasn't part of the original group. The teasing started pretty early too, and before anyone jumps on me. Yes, siblings tease each other. I know that. I'm not claiming every single comment was abuse. But when you're the only person on the receiving end of it, it starts feeling different. The first time I remember crying about it was probably a year after we all started living together. Kara and Tessa were arguing with me about something stupid. I don't even remember what it was. At one point, Kara said something like, "You're not even really our sister anyway." She said it like it was obvious, like it didn't even count as a mean thing to say. They moved on from the argument pretty quickly after that, but I remember sitting in my room thinking about it for hours. That's one of the things she said in the therapy session she didn't remember saying. Again, I believe her. Because for her, it was probably just another sentence during a fight. For me, it was the moment I realized the house wasn't going to feel like home the way my mom hoped it would. Over the years, the comments kind of evolved. It wasn't always direct insults. Sometimes it was just the three of them talking about me like I wasn't there. If I asked to sit with them, they'd say things like, "We were actually about to do something else." If I tried joining a conversation, they'd suddenly change topics or stop talking. Other times it was more direct. Tessa called me spoiled because my mom bought me a new phone. Bree laughed when I got upset during a fight. Kara making comments about how I run to my mom whenever I can't handle something. The thing about that is, I didn't actually run to my mom that often. But when you're the youngest person in a house where three older girls are constantly reminding you that you're the outsider, eventually you do start looking for a safe place. For me, that was usually my mom, which then became proof in their minds that I was the problem. It's a weird loop. One part Kara did get right in her post is that my mom eventually started giving me more space. The car thing started because of a road trip where the arguing got so bad that I cried halfway through the drive. After that, my mom just started taking me in the other car. The bedroom thing at the cabin happened for a similar reason. On one trip, the three of them stayed up most of the night talking and laughing about me after a fight earlier in the evening. I was in the same room trying to pretend I was asleep. The next time we went to the cabin, my mom asked if I could use the queen room instead. So yes, technically I did get different treatment. But it didn't start because I demanded it. It started because the adults realized being stuck in the same spaces with my stepsisters wasn't working. The group chat incident Kara described in her update was kind of the breaking point, and she actually left out part of it. When I picked up Bree's phone, the messages I saw weren't just the few lines she quoted. There were a lot more above that. Reading it felt like getting punched in the stomach. Not because it was shocking, because it confirmed something I'd already suspected for a long time. After that night, things escalated pretty quickly. We did start therapy like Kara mentioned. The first session was awkward, but the therapist was actually really good at getting people to slow down and explain things. When it was my turn to talk, I did bring up that "not a real sister" comment, and a few others. What Kara didn't mention is that the therapist asked the three of them how they thought those things might feel to hear as the youngest person in the house. There was a really long silence. Eventually, Bree said she didn't think it was that serious. The therapist asked why three people repeatedly making the same person feel excluded might not seem serious to them. That's when things started getting tense. Over the next few sessions, more stuff came out. The group chat was one example. There were others. One time, they had hidden one of my school projects as a joke and let me panic for an hour before giving it back. Another time, they locked me out of my room while laughing on the other side of the door. Again, none of those things sound huge individually. But therapy is weird because when you line up a bunch of smaller moments together, the pattern becomes a lot harder to ignore. My stepdad, their dad, started realizing how much of this he had brushed off over the years. That realization didn't go well with my sisters. Bree especially got angry about it. She said therapy was just turning into a place where everyone blamed them for everything. After a couple sessions, she stopped going. A few weeks later, she moved out and got an apartment with a friend from work, so now she doesn't live in the house anymore. Things with Kara and Tessa got worse before they got better. There was one argument after a therapy session where Kara said I had basically manipulated the entire situation and turned everyone against them. My stepdad overheard it. That argument lasted almost an hour. After that, he made a decision that honestly surprised everyone. Kara and Tessa were sent to stay with our grandma for a while. At first, it was supposed to be temporary. But it's been a few months now, and they're still living there. The house feels really different without them, quieter, less tense. I still feel weird writing that because they're technically my sisters, even if we never felt like it. But it's the truth. Therapy is still happening too. Mostly now it's my mom, my stepdad, and me. We talk about boundaries and communication and what a healthier family dynamic might look like going forward. I don't know exactly what things will look like long term. Maybe Kara and Tessa will eventually move back. Maybe the distance will stay. What I do know is that for the first time in years, the house actually feels calm. And I don't have to constantly wonder if the next comment or joke is going to remind me that I'm the outsider again. Reading Kara's posts made me realize something though. She genuinely believes her version of the story. In her mind, she was just defending herself against favoritism. From my side, it felt like surviving a house where three people never really wanted me there. Both of those things can exist at the same time. But pretending the cruelty never happened doesn't make it disappear. That's the part she missed.